I'm Vinnie Politan. The subject of my investigation is the murder of Rebecca Park, a pregnant woman close to giving birth who had her baby cut out of her stomach. And you won't believe who did it. Here's the story. 22-year-old Rebecca Park was 38 weeks pregnant when she vanished from her biological mother's home in Wexford County, Michigan on November 3rd, 2025. Though raised by adoptive parents who loved her, Rebecca had reconnected with her biological mother, Courtney Bartholomew, and her husband, Bradley. Weeks after disappearing, searchers found Rebecca's body in the Manistee National Forest. Her unborn baby was not with her remains. Court affidavits allege that Courtney and Bradley lured Rebecca to their home, drove her into the woods, stabbed her, forced her to lay down, and then attempted to cut the baby from her womb, killing both mother and child. Both face first-degree murder, felony murder, torture, assault on a pregnant individual, and related charges carrying a possible life sentence. Rebecca's sister, Kimberly Park, was arrested on evidence tampering, false reporting, and lying to police. Rebecca's fiance, Richard Fowler, was arrested on drug charges as investigators continue piecing together this horrific plot. What is going on? This is unreal. The allegation is that a woman is pregnant, about to give birth, and her mother cuts her grandchild out of the stomach of her daughter. That's what it is. Now, the case began as a missing persons investigation because Rebecca Park was first reported missing, so there was a search for her, so nobody was arrested. It wasn't a murder case until it was. Let's bring in Court TV field reporter Cody Thomas. Cody, I've been taking a look at the details in this case, which are at times difficult to follow, harder to understand or comprehend, I guess, or fathom maybe is the best word. But let's talk about the biological mom, Courtney Bartholomew. What was she saying before Rebecca was found? When this is a missing persons case and her daughter, her biological daughter that she was reunited with is missing. What is she saying? What is she talking about? What is she saying publicly?
Well, yeah, Vinnie, Rebecca Park was reported missing on November 4th by her sister, Kimberly Park. Now, a sheriff's deputy spoke with Rebecca's biological mother, Courtney, on the 4th. And according to a probable cause affidavit, Courtney said she was with Rebecca the night before until about 8:30 when an unidentified friend picked Rebecca up. Now, you jump ahead a few weeks, Rebecca is still missing. On November 19th, Courtney Bartholomew went on Steph's Case Files YouTube live stream and talked about her daughter's disappearance. She addressed rumors that she wanted to steal Rebecca's baby and that she seemingly pointed the finger at Rebecca's fiance, Rich.
People are going to say what they're going to say no matter what you say. You can tell them the timeline. Everybody's, oh, I want the timeline, timeline, timeline. I have said the same thing from the get-go. I want my daughter found. I'm tired of hearing that, you know, oh, well, she's not doing anything. Okay, I can't do anything, but you know what? I can answer a phone and I can message people and message the detective and all that. So I'm doing my part. And I just asked the lady today for a search party that did the search party. I just asked her today because I've got word that a place needs to be searched, but it has to be hush-hush because we have new information and I can't say what that is.
I'm trying to put this to you so that you understand why people are so on edge here. At the same time that your daughter is due to give birth, you claim that this post that came from the Book of Faces about a newborn being in the NICU is false. So in other words, somebody would have had to make a fake account to send that message to look like it was from you. So take that into consideration, okay? And then you've got plans to move to Texas at the same time. And you've got you taking IVF treatments. And so that's why the public has this notion that somehow you had plans to steal this baby and run off to Texas. What is your response to that?
That is about the lowest thing I've ever heard. And my son, he's 14. He's always wanted a sibling. Always wanted a sibling. And I have put off having a baby. Well, I'm getting an age where if I'm going to have one, I'm going to have one. If not, then I'm not going to. I'm at that point right now. So having a baby is for my 14-year-old. He wants a sibling. He's been wanting one, and if I can do that before I get to that age, then we're going to try. And my husband wants one between us.
On the Snapchat that she sent, which I'm sure you've read, she says that she is cleaning up a room with a flashlight. And I just thought, why? And they don't have any lights?
Because at night, Rich shuts off the lights at his dad's house, so she's got to tiptoe around to clean, if she wants to clean. Rich ain't getting off his ass to clean, trust me. He is not going to help her with anything. He's lazy, he's a drug addict. My daughter would have had to do it all. And then on top of it, him beating her, come on. I've only left maybe twice since my daughter's been missing. Rich is running around with his baby mama, Ashley. And he's running around with Paige. And he's running around with Mr. Mercer. And he's running around with this person. He's not sitting home waiting for her to come back. And I wonder why. With the information that I have, I know why he's not.
The next day on November 20th, Courtney Bartholomew went on the same YouTube live stream and talked about a hit that had been put out on Rebecca. Now, she also shared her suspicions about her other daughter, Kimberly.
Okay, so I will start with the whole thing that I said about the hit. Becca was there when Randy did what he did. And then she went to another guy, which was her second baby daddy. And he went to jail, and Becca didn't. While he was in jail, well, when they took him to prison, he put a hit on her. He was brutally murdered in prison, and there is still a hit on her. When I asked, and True Crime can say this, when I asked Kimberly about the rugs, she was very vague. She didn't want to talk about it, but she said that she was a CI and that there was a few things going on Friday. I don't want to get into it too much, but she said that she was working for Wexford County.
Who was?
Kimberly.
Kimberly is an informant? I don't.
That's what she's.
See, this is a thing with informants. Usually they don't come out and talk. Usually they don't speak.
Exactly. That's what I told her. I said, if you were an informant, you wouldn't be telling me what you're telling me.
Now, Vinnie, on November 22nd, Courtney posted an audio recording on her Facebook page of an unidentified male voice with the caption, "My alibi of where I was the night my daughter came up missing." Take a listen to this.
She gave me my meds at about 8:40. I don't remember a lot, as I just said, but she was there when I went to bed, and she was also there when I woke up the next day. I know that she never goes out and about when I'm sleeping, just because she doesn't like to drive at night.
So, Vinnie, you have Courtney saying all these things, talking for extended amounts of times to this YouTube channel here, claiming to have an alibi, yet we now know she's the one sitting behind bars alongside her husband charged with Rebecca's murder.
Yeah, unbelievable the way all of this sort of developed and where we are now. Thanks, Cody. He's going to stick around for the hour. This brings us to the first question in our investigation, and it's about all of these interviews. What do these interviews reveal about what happened, about Courtney? Wow. Let's bring in our guests who are going to help us with this. Of course, with us is the host of Steph's Case Files, Stephanie Pratt. She's the one who got the interview with the victim's family that we just heard. Amazing work. And Chief Public Defender for Oakland County, Michigan, Paulette Lofton. Thank you both for being here. Steph, thanks again for joining us tonight. And again, great work there. For you, the one who's doing these interviews and getting her to come on and speak, what did they reveal to you?
Right off the bat, it revealed a very complicated situation, Vinnie. She came right on the panel, and what I was trying to do was establish a concrete timeline and then find the faults in the timeline, things that didn't make sense. And I would challenge her on those. She always had an immediate answer. She always had an answer for everything. And I found that peculiar, not even to think about it. Although when I asked her if Brad was there that night, she took an entire 12 seconds to answer.
That's interesting. All right, Paulette, she's now charged with murder, right? She is speaking a lot. It's recorded, it's memorialized. What are your thoughts about what these interviews and statements reveal and how it may or may not impact the trial?
Definitely these are going to be admitted if she goes to trial. Usually guilty people like to talk and offer other possibilities of what had happened. The fact that she was focusing on this podcast about her desire to have another child is absolutely mind-blowing to me. All of her comments make this situation even worse, and I think a jury is going to absolutely hate the fact that she wanted to prove her innocence and found a podcast to go on to lead the investigators down some crazy path. This is not going to be good for her.
Yeah, so Steph, that to me, that's a big part of this case, right? Her children were, Rebecca and her sister Kim, she didn't raise them. They were raised by an adoptive family. They left when they were babies. She has a 14-year-old, and she wants another child. And it all kind of plays into a potential motive in all this. What was your takeaway from your lengthy interviews with her when it came to, the mindset, when it came to bringing or having a baby in the house?
Well, I don't know if you saw Stephanie Park's interview today. That was the adoptive mother of Rebecca and Kimberly, and also an older sibling. But she herself talked about the fact that Courtney wanted to keep Kimberly's baby not that long ago, and it took them a month to get the baby out of Courtney's way. And there has been a long stand of knowledge that Courtney has been trying to find the daughters. The adoptive mother has had to put restraining orders on her before when they were underage because she was trying to find them. She talked about wanting to have a baby and move to Texas and all of these things. And I was putting it all together in my head. What is the motive here? And I believe the motive was that baby.
Yeah, all right. Stephanie and Paulette are staying with us. Coming up next, what is Kimberly Park's role in what happened to her sister?
Person at the jail, please state your name for the record.
Kimberly Park.
Coming soon to Court TV.
A Microsoft executive gunned down. Now his ex and her new husband are charged with his murder.
I'm gonna kill her.
An alleged murder plot involving a family's au pair and the married father she worked for.
A social media sensation, now a suspected killer.
Why do you have something against me?
She wrote a children's book about her husband's death. Now she's accused of killing him.
The high-stakes trials you don't want to miss. Coming soon, only on Court TV.
This is case number 254947FY. Again, the people of the state of Michigan versus Kimberly Sue Park.
The allegations in this case, separate from the Bartholomew cases, is an interview that occurred on November 28th. If I can get that recording and the police report, that would get us started a long way towards our conversations, I think, without having to get into all of the follow-up investigation that relates to Bartholomew's.
So Rebecca Park's sister, Kimberly, in court there, she was arrested. She's facing some charges in this case. Let's bring back in Court TV field reporter Cody Thomas. Cody, let's again go to the time when Rebecca is missing. She has not been found yet. Her body, her remains have not been found. What is her sister, Kimberly, saying? And who is she speaking to? What is she saying while her sister is missing?
But yeah, Vinny, from what we've read in the probable cause affidavit, Kimberly Park has been saying a lot, but her statements have not always been consistent, as you know. Now, Kimberly Park has been charged with tampering with evidence, lying to a peace officer, and false report of a felony. Now, the probable cause affidavit lays out what Kimberly told police, so let's walk right through it here real quick. Now, on November 4th, 2025, Kimberly Park reports Rebecca missing to authorities. She says Rebecca was last known to be with Courtney Bartholomew. Now, on November 22nd, 2025, Kimberly makes statements on a social media live broadcast that Courtney and Brad Bartholomew had something to do with Rebecca's disappearance. That social media broadcast may have been on the Steph's Case File YouTube channel, where Kimberly says her mother threatened her if she spoke. Take a listen to this.
Courtney told me if I say absolutely anything, me and my daughter are both going down for it. She said it to my face. She said it the day after my sister disappeared when I came out there.
This is serious. And if your mom is capable of one child, she is certainly capable of another.
Now, later that same day, Kimberly tells investigators Courtney and Brad had struck Rebecca in the head, causing her to have a seizure, and they were unable to revive her. Kimberly says Brad had a friend take Rebecca's body away, possibly to a swamp. Then on November 25th, 2025, Rebecca's body is found. She had sharp force trauma wounds to her neck and her abdomen. Her baby had been cut out of her womb. Now, that same day, Kimberly tells detectives Richard Failer had told her Rebecca had been taken care of and not to worry about it. Kimberly tells detectives Richard Failer instructed her to lie about Courtney and Brad's involvement. Kimberly Park is then arrested for lying to police and obstructing the investigation. Kimberly continues to tell authorities Richard Failer confessed to killing Rebecca, but appeared to have unsubstantiated information, such as Rebecca being stored in an unknown location. And on November 26, 2025, during a follow-up interview with detectives, Kimberly Park requested an attorney and the interview was terminated. So, Vinnie, going through all that, it seems like she may have told police what she thought was the truth towards the beginning, but as things started to unfold, clearly the water started to get a little bit muddy there.
More than a little bit muddy. Thanks so much, Cody. All right, that brings us to the next question in our investigation, and it's about Rebecca's sister. What is Kimberly Park's role in what happened to her sister? Still with us to help with our investigation, Stephanie Pratt and Paulette Lofton. All right, Stephanie, what are your thoughts here about the role of Kim in what happened to her sister, Rebecca?
I think Kimberly wants to be loved and she wants to be accepted. She wants a relationship with her biological mother. And I believe that she was perhaps persuaded, of course, we will know more when the details come out in court, to detour police away from where Rebecca actually was and the actual facts in the case. Now, Kimberly says that she was having an affair with Rich because the cadaver dogs hit on her bedroom. She said that's because they were having an affair. So you have an accusation of an affair between her and Rich. Rich engaged to her sister, who used to date their mother. So there are a lot of different layers here and roles and things going on. Kimberly, what she actually said versus what actually happened will come out in court, and we'll see exactly what her role is at that time.
Yeah. Paulette, this is a complicated story because there have been so many stories. What are your thoughts about how this is going to play out with Kimberly Park in terms of the case involving the murder of her sister?
So I think based on the extensive investigation that they did, that they're pretty sure that she didn't take part in the murder. Otherwise, she would have been charged. So I think how this is going to play out either they want her to flip and give the actual information that she was given by her mother and her stepfather, or they simply were just so fed up with all of the stories, because this was a very lengthy investigation for a very long time. I mean, we had a missing pregnant woman, which already causes so many concerns. And then we started getting more and more and more stories. So one, the charges could just be a lesson to show, listen, you cannot interfere with an investigation, especially something so serious. So I think, I definitely don't think she was a part of the murder, but I think she definitely muddied the waters, which made the investigation more difficult for the police officers.
And will make the trial more complicated as well. But Stephanie, I come back to this though. Like, she's the one that the investigation doesn't happen if she doesn't make that call, right? She's the one that's reporting her sister missing. So to me, I tend to believe that she's not involved because she's the one that starts the whole investigation. Otherwise, this whole thing could be like way under the radar, and there might be rumblings, but no one ever calls to say someone's missing.
That's right. I do not believe that she's involved with the actual murder itself, but it's important to note that when she went down to the police department, when she took the phone, when they found the phone on the 2-track and she took it to the police department, on that day, she told them that Rich was not good to Rebecca, that they should suspect Rich and look into Rich. It was very heavily weighted on Rich during that November the 4th interview at the police department, which set off a whole path of police investigating Rich before really they looked around at Courtney. And so I believe that she was setting up the scene to get the attention away from Brad and Courtney, but for what reason, we are yet to find out.
Yeah, it's complicated, to say the least. Paulette Lofton, thank you so much. Stephanie Pratt, Steph's Case Files. Make sure you check it out, folks. Really great work, interesting stuff. You saw some of it tonight. Unbelievable. All right, still to come. What is the truth about why the baby was removed? I'm Vinnie Politan. We continue our investigation of the brutal murder of Rebecca Park, a young woman who was adopted, then found her birth mother, who is now accused of killing her. Here's the story.
Weeks after Rebecca Park was reported missing just days before her due date, her remains were found deep in a northern Michigan forest on November 25th, 2025. And investigators say the circumstances were chilling beyond belief. According to court filings, Rebecca's biological mother, Courtney Bartholomew, and her husband, Bradley, allegedly brought the pregnant woman to their home, then drove her to the woods, stabbed her, forced her to lie still, and attempted to extract her baby, a fetus that did not survive, and discarded that infant's body. Courtney, who had given Rebecca up for adoption as an infant and only re-entered her life recently, allegedly confessed to investigators that she used a scalpel and cut the child from her daughter's womb. Prosecutors have charged both Courtney and Bradley with a long list of counts, including first-degree murder, conspiracy, torture, assault causing stillbirth, each carrying potential life sentences. Rebecca's sister, Kimberly Park, faces charges for tampering with evidence, lying to police, and filing a false report. And Rebecca's fiancé, Richard Fowler, was arrested separately on drug distribution charges. As the community reels from betrayal and brutality, law enforcement and the FBI are still searching for any trace of that missing baby and answers that may never come.
This story is one that you think about the underlying factual allegations that a woman who was adopted goes to find her birth mother. Her birth mother ends up being accused of killing her, but before she kills her, she cuts out the baby. Let's bring in Court TV field reporter Cody Thomas. What exactly do the documents, the court documents, say about how the baby was removed.
Well, Vinnie, the probable cause affidavit goes into grave, horrific detail about how that baby was physically cut out of Rebecca, along with her other injuries, once they eventually found her body. Now, the affidavit says, quote, it walks through the autopsy a little bit. An autopsy was conducted at Western Michigan University by Dr. Christine James and was attended by Deputy Alexis Howard. There were 6 sharp force wounds to Park's back, 2 to the right upper arm, 1 to the left trapezius area, 2 to the neck, and at least 2 to the face. The right side of the face also has a laceration and an irregular wound to the cheek of unknown etiology. Rebecca Park's abdomen had incised wounds. The placenta was hanging from the open abdominal wound with attached umbilical cord, and the fetus was absent. The abdomen incision transcended the colon and the small bowel. Now, Vinnie, this next portion is after a warrant is executed on Courtney and Brad's phones. It says, quote, these records show device movement and lingering in the areas consistent with where Bradley and Courtney reported recovering Rebecca Park's cellular device and where her body was discovered on November 25th, 2025, on several occasions on Monday, November 3rd, 2025, in the evening hours, the 3rd, of course, being the day that Rebecca went missing.
All right. Do the documents, do they talk about the why of it? All right, this is how the baby's removed, like why the baby was removed.
Yeah, Vinnie, so we got conflicting stories between Bradley and Courtney that they're telling police before the prosecution finally nails down their own theory through different investigative interviews. So we'll start with Bradley's story that he initially told, according to this probable cause affidavit. It says, quote, Bradley reported being upset when Kimberly was on the internet saying that he and Courtney were responsible, making a statement that he doesn't understand how anyone could do that to a pregnant woman. He answered that he believes that Courtney and Rich would be capable of doing something such as this. When asked for what purpose, he gave different possibilities. Bradley agreed that he believes that Courtney is capable of slicing open her own flesh and blood and taking a baby out. He agreed that Courtney is obsessed with wanting another baby in her care and custody. He also agreed that it was a good possibility she could attack Rebecca and cut a baby out of her. Now, Vinnie, we move on to Courtney's story, according to this probable cause affidavit. Says Detective Sergeant Voss again told her, we need to know what she knows to take it to the prosecutor. When he suggests an example that she will even tell us where the baby is, she interrupts and says, in the garbage, in a blue cooler. When asked where, she reported, in the GFL, which I looked up at GFL, Vinnie, that's a waste company, pretty much like a trash truck. Courtney says, he said he put him in a black bag. The cooler's gone. The cooler is Brad's work cooler, adding, he put him inside the cooler and drove him up and down the road looking for a GFL. That wasn't mine. When Sergeant Voss asked why, Courtney reported that it was related to Bradley going to jail last year when Failer turned him in. She explained that it is all retaliation. And then, Vinnie, this next portion is the portion that pretty much brings the prosecution to their ultimate theory. It says, quote, eventually, Courtney admitted that she cut the baby out of Rebecca in an attempt to save him so she could take him to Rich. When she cut the baby out, Courtney said that Rebecca was still conscious and Bradley was holding the knife to her throat. She told Rebecca to lay back, quote, your baby is gonna die. Once the baby was out, she said Bradley slit Rebecca's throat with the knife. Bradley said that the baby stayed in the cooler that night on the back porch. He now reported it was Wednesday, November 5th, 2025, when the items were placed into dumpsters, specifically because Thursday was garbage day. And Vinnie, what I want to do now, I want our viewers to take a listen to the prosecutor pretty much talking about all of these egregious acts in court. Take a listen.
This is a case of premeditated torture and murder. These two individuals created a plan, conducted research. Ms. Bartholomew brought Rebecca to their home. They forced her into another vehicle and took her into the woods where they stabbed her, forced her to lie on the ground while they cut her baby out and ultimately caused her death and the death of the baby. They then left Rebecca in the woods. This is, frankly, evil personified.
And Vinnie, I think evil personified is putting it lightly. I don't even know if there's a word or a phrasing of words that could begin to describe how heinous this really is.
Yeah, and so many different stories that they're telling. Thanks so much, Cody. Brings us to the next question in our investigation. What is the truth about why the baby was removed? Does how the baby was removed answer that question? Let's bring in our guests who are going to help us answer that question. Forensic death investigator, host of the very popular Body Bags podcast, Joseph Scott Morgan. Also joining us, psychiatrist, forensic specialist, and medical health expert, Dr. Yalda Safai. Great to have you both here. All right, Joseph Scott Morgan, what are your thoughts here? If the reason was to steal the baby, and the description of what happened to this young woman, does that make sense to you? Or does it make sense that this scene and what happened to Rebecca is more about the torture?
Yeah, it seems like to be more about the torture. And she's at term. Remember, we heard that she was at 38 weeks, Vin, and so that is a viable baby at that point in time. If it wasn't about the torture and you want a kid, why not sequester her, hold her in one location, because the baby's coming, all right? We know it, everybody knows it, and then afterwards facilitate her death in the wake of that. That way you guarantee that, or at least you have a higher probability of having a child that would survive, as opposed to going to these lengths. I think that a lot of this has to do with torture. I love the word menacing, because, I'm wondering how many of these injuries that she sustained were sustained, particularly those on the posterior aspect that we've heard about, where she's being prodded along to go into the woods. Very interested in that. And I've entertained the idea at some point in time that this baby, they may have tried to extricate this baby in order to sell it as well. And we've had cases like that over the years. So I don't know. I'm just gobsmacked, as the Brits say, over this. This is absolutely horrific.
Yeah. Dr. Safai, what are your thoughts about what happened here, the how and why of it?
I mean, I agree with my co-panelists. I think a more logical thing would have been to let the baby be born, have a relationship with her until the baby is born, and then attempt to maybe take the baby without risking the life of the baby. The chances that a baby will survive such an act are very, very low. I don't know if they had thought this through or they meant to really torture this poor person, but this is one of the worst things I've ever heard. It's the most appalling, atrocious thing that a person can do, is to cut a baby out of another human being, your own flesh and blood, in order to obtain that baby. So it's really confusing what the motive was, but based on everything that we heard previously and the previous statements Courtney made on the podcast, it seems like she really wanted a baby. I just don't know if she thought this through or if her motive was to really torture Rebecca. I think we need to wait and find out.
Yeah. Joseph Scott Morgan, in your career, have you ever come across anything similar to this?
Not having worked it as an investigator, we've covered several of these in the news. I think one up in the Dakotas. There was another one, I think, not too long ago in Kansas. Actually, a lady was put to death, I think, if I'm not misremembering. Vin, I got one question to ask here, though. They talked about a scalpel. I want to know how she acquired a scalpel. Now, you can pick these up on Amazon. Obviously, you can go to a veterinarian supply location to do this. I would think, because that's an element of premeditation, I would think that you're planning to do something with a scalpel. If you're not a professional that's going to have it around for whatever purpose, veterinary medicine, I don't know, maybe she's a nurse's aide, she can get her hands on one. I think that, again, that's going to be part of the puzzle. Trying to track that down, because that's a very specific instrument that you're talking about. I had heard about a knife before, but tonight on Court TV, this is the first time I've heard of a scalpel.
All right, we're a little short on time tonight, but we appreciate it so much. Joseph Scott Morgan, Dr. Yalda Safai, thank you so much. Coming up next, how toxic was the family dynamic?
On Court TV.
I'm Vinnie Politan. Welcome to Closing Arguments. We have a big hour ahead here.
Your deplorable actions are unforgivable.
The community still doesn't know how this Boston police officer died.
He can't prove one element of his case.
It was a dramatic day, a dramatic moment inside the courtroom.
What's happening here?
It's unreal. Let me show you exactly what happened.
Closing Arguments with Vinnie Politan. Weeknights at 8, 7 Central. Only on Court TV.
There they are, being arraigned, husband and wife, accused of the murder of Rebecca Park. All right, let's bring back in Court TV field reporter Cody Thomas on this one. This is a family story. Cody, what do we know about this family?
Well, Vinny, in order to understand this family, we got to walk through all the players in the family. We got to walk through who's who. And let's begin with the victim here, Rebecca Park. She was 38 weeks pregnant, last seen on November 3rd, 2025. Her remains were discovered November 25th in Manistee National Forest. The baby was not located with Rebecca's body. Then we move on to Courtney and Bradley Bartholomew. Now, Courtney was Rebecca Park's biological mother, Bradley, her stepfather. Park was raised by a couple who adopted her and her siblings. Now, these two are both charged with a slew of charges here. You can see them: first-degree murder, felony murder, torture, conspiracy to commit torture, assault of a pregnant individual, conspiracy to commit assault, unlawful imprisonment, and removing a body without medical examiner permission. Then we move on to Kimberly Park. This is Rebecca's sister, who's charged with tampering with evidence, lying to a peace officer, and false report of a felony. This whole thing gets underway because of her, because of Kimberly. And then we got Richard Thaler. Vinny, this is Rebecca Park's fiance, and here's where it gets a little, there's some non-traditional overlap, because he also supposedly slept with Rebecca's mother, her biological mother and sister, at 2 different points in time. Now, he's also charged with 2 counts of delivering methamphetamine. Now, Vinny, we had anchor and reporter with 9 and 10 News, Jody Meason, on the program a few days ago, discussing how Rebecca's adoptive parents were totally against this reunification. Take a listen to what she had to say.
The biological mother, she has not been in Becca Park's life up until she was about 18. She was adopted by, you had mentioned earlier, another family from the age of 1. And in fact, it was not only Becca, but it was Kimberly and an older brother that were adopted all at the same time. And I did speak to the mom that adopted them, and she says that she tried her best to keep them separate from this family because they were dangerous. And when Becca turned 18, she took it upon herself to go out and seek this family, and it's been a back and forth ever since.
And Vinny, clearly now we know those adoptive parents were more than right about this family, and it's sad that they have to live with this from here on out because they were so against it in the first place.
Yeah, it was almost predictable, I guess, for the adoptive family, because they knew where the children came from, but the children had a yearning. I want to meet my biological mom. I want to have a relationship. All right, Cody Thomas, great work. Thank you so much. That brings us to the final question in our investigation this hour. How toxic was the family dynamic? That's all right. Here to help with our investigation, clinical and forensic psychologist and author, Dr. Leslie Dobson. Dr. Dobson, I think about this whole situation, the scenario between everyone sleeping with this Fowler guy. Mom had her kids taken away, then they come back and find her, and then she wants another baby, and she's trying to get one of her daughter's children, and then her other daughter gets pregnant. Now, I mean, how toxic is all of this?
Very toxic from age 18 to 20. But it doesn't sound like there was much contact prior to that. So I think that, we're platforming what may be delusional and false information.
What do you mean?
Well, if you listen to the adoptive mother and how she talks about she knew from age 1 that this woman was dangerous. And she also described that Courtney reached out to the children, offering them money, and that's what drew them in.
So, Rebecca Parks continues this relationship for 4 years, because it's not till she's 22 that she is murdered in the woods. What do you think it was that kept her there, that kept her keeping her biological mother in her life?
Her biological mother. It sounds like her mother was extremely manipulative mentally ill. I don't even think she would fit in the DSM-5 diagnostic manual for psychologists. But it sounds like she certainly had an obsession with wanting a baby, which I think is common when you have borderline personality disorder, a lack of identity, and that baby is going to offer you an identity. And her children were taken from her when she was young. So it makes sense that she would try and take theirs in a psychotic, delusional sense.
And she has a 14-year-old son, right? So Rebecca had I guess a half brother who was 14. I don't know exactly what his status is, but it seems like he relies upon his mother a lot. She talks about having to keep him medicated and things that she's doing there. And she kind of leaned on him as he's the one that always wanted a sibling. How does that, get into the mix here of what's going on in this family dynamic?
I mean, my mind goes straight to Munchausen's by proxy. None of this is factual. And the only person I truly would believe is the adoptive mother. You have sadistic, torturous, obsessive behaviors. And the son and the medication, the stories are very odd. The likely falsified alibi. We need the real evidence. And I don't think we should be platforming Courtney. I think all that's going to do is harm the actual case.
And joining us on the phone, licensed psychologist, Dr. Michael Brannon. Dr. Brannon, great to have you on. What are your thoughts about how toxic this family dynamic was?
Well, it's toxic from a number of different standpoints, Vinny. I mean, the first thing we have to ask ourselves is, how can someone engage in behaviors these horrible, this terrible? And part of it has to do with just a lack of attachment, which we know from the very beginning in this family was the case. Mother was unable to care for the child. Rebecca had to give that child up for adoption. The child was taken for adoption. So we know there's lack of attachment. We know that we have 3 different people in the family all sleeping with the same person, Rich. We know that in this case, mother unfortunately cuts the baby and then later has the Rebecca killed herself. So in those scenarios, there's not only a lack of attachment, but there's anger and rage. And those things have to be explained. Who's the angriest here? Rebecca is stabbed 13 times, twice in the face. That's rageful. That's angry. What was somebody so angry and rageful over? So you have all of these things going on at the same time, Vinny, and with all sorts of antisocial behavior surrounding it. Yeah. Drug use, sexual liaison.
Dr. Brannon, we're up against a break and we're out of time, but I appreciate, I'm glad we were able to connect with you, Dr. Dobson.
Thanks, Vinny.
And Dr. Dobson, thank you as well. This is one of the most confusing and bizarre stories we've covered in quite some time, but for me, there's a simple tragedy here. A young woman who wanted a relationship with her biological mother, and as a result, her baby was killed and she was killed. There's no justice anywhere in this story, regardless of who gets charged or who gets convicted. It's just really sad and really evil all at once. I'm Vinnie Politan. The investigation continues.